bias adversely affects millions of people every single day. Puritanical bias is the flawed idea that personal moral failings are to blame for people's outcomes in their life. Puritanical bias is especially dangerous because it targets already disadvantaged groups such as drug users or people who are obese. I'm an organizational psychology major, so I understand how psychological influences can change people's behaviors. I have also done a lot of research on opioid use disorder and stigmas and biases surrounding that in an internship, so I'm well read on this subject. Puritanical bias is a dangerous bias that can be shut down through understanding social determinants, stigma, and situationism. First, I'm going to explain social determinants and how it relates to puritanical bias. Then I'm going to explain stigma. Finally, I'm going to explain situationism and how it can be used to disprove puritanical bias. So on to social determinants. Social determinants, such as where we live, socialize, work, or the opportunities of education that we can have great effects on people's lives, whether positive or negative. Social determinants, such as housing instability or environmental hazards, can have great negative effects on people's lives. In a study, allostatic load was theorized, which is this idea that cumulative stress can have negative effects on somebody's brain. These negative effects can be decreased brain function and increased unhealthy behaviors. These can also lead to more stress, which can lead to more allostatic load, which creates a cycle. Social determinants have also been shown to lead to increased drug use. In a study, women who self-reported feeling negative effects of social determinants such as racial discrimination, gender discrimination, and housing insecurity were shown to have a higher likelihood of being drug users compared to women who self-reported feeling little to none of these social determinants. People with puritanical bias might say, these drug users should have better self-control and they wouldn't be drug users, but they don't look and see the broader social determinants that could be at play for why they are drug users. Now I will explain stigma. Stigma differs greatly from social determinants in that social determinants are factors or attributes of a person, whereas stigma are socially constructed ideas. Stigma can follow people and have very negative effects on their lives, very similar to what I just explained with social determinants. People, such as drug users, can have stigma surrounding them, in which healthcare professionals will look at them as irresponsible and unable to take responsible action for themselves, leaving these patients feeling humiliated and pathetic. Stigma can also be surrounded by people with diseases which are out of their control. These diseases can lead these people to having poorer support systems and higher increase for drug use and hospitalization and death, as well as homelessness. Stigmas can also surround invisible diseases such as HIV and AIDS, which can lead people to not seek medical treatment for fear of revealing their secret. I think that this is horrifying, and I hope that you think so too. Now I'm going to explain situationism. Situationism is the psychological idea that people's behavior can change from situation to situation or in different environments. Stanley Milgram's famous experiment in which he told participants that they needed to deliver shocks to people in incremental bits is a very famous idea of situationism. In the experiment, almost all of Milgram's participants delivered what they believed to be a fatal shock to a participant when told by researchers that everything was okay. These people fully believed that they were delivering fatal shocks, however, they still did it. Research done by Dr. Berger of Santa Clara University revealed that situational factors probably had a very big influence. One situational factor is the increments of the shocks. If the shocks were delivered in one large burst, people may not have done it, but since they were done incrementally, people's attitudes about them were incrementally increased to be more accepting of them. Another situational factor mentioned by Dr. Berger is the diffusion of responsibility. Since the participants felt somewhat anonymous and they were surrounded by other people in the experiment, such as researchers, they diffused the responsibility between themselves and those researchers, as well as the university and also the supposed people on the other side who were getting the shocks. Another famous psychological experiment that highlights situationism was done by Philip Zimbardo in the famous Stanford prison study. In the Stanford prison study, Two groups of people, college students, one of them denoted as guards and one of them denoted as prisoners, were put in a mock prison and were told to act as if they were a real prison for a few weeks. The study had to get cut short though, because Philip Zimbardo could not continue to witness the awful psychological effects happening to these poor boys. The guards became increasingly sadistic, performing horrible deeds such as verbal and physical abuse, as well as sexual abuse, to these prisoners, who were constantly dehumanized and seemed to empathize more so with the numbers on their chest than the actual names. They were not real prisoners, but they felt as if they were real prisoners. Philip Zimbardo says that some of the most heinous actions done by these sadistic guards happened in the middle of the night, where it seemed that there were no cameras or researchers to tell them that that is not okay. This is a situational aspect that has changed these boys' behaviors. Almost none of these college students would ever dream of being capable of such deeds, but the situation that they were put in showed that they could do different things. Puritanically biased people would say that these boys are moral failures. However, the situation had a great effect on them, and almost anybody put in those situations would have a tough time acting in a different way, according to situationism. Now that I have explained social determinants, stigmas, and situationism, please use these to defuse puritanical bias in your own mind and to shut down people who use puritanical bias in arguments. I hope that you look to examples in your own life, whether past or present, and shut them down with the facts I have offered you today. Please do not let puritanical bias adversely affect any more people, since it literally affects millions of people every single day in the form of biases and stigma.